What's up, rookies? Welcome back to Rotation Ready. If you're new here, please subscribe right now. We're working through all 9 domains of pharmacy rotations, backed by over 1,200 preceptor observations I've collected over my 10 years of experience as a pharmacist and as a pharmacy preceptor. Last video, we kicked off domain 1, foundational knowledge, and I gave you the map. It was 8 categories, F1 through F8 of foundational knowledge. Today, we're going to focus on F1, nomenclature. And I want to tell you why this one comes first. Not because it's the most complicated. It might actually be the simplest thing you can learn as a pharmacy student. It's not the most complicated. It comes first because it's the most immediately visible. Every time you open your mouth to counsel a patient, present a case, or take a medication history, your drug name vocabulary is on display. Every other knowledge gap can be hidden for a few days, but an F1 gap shows up in the very first conversations. As always, let me start with a story. And this time, I want to tell you about an admissions medication reconciliation. I had a student who was on a transitions of care rotation with me, and his job was to establish what the patient had been taking at home before admission so we could reconcile it against what was being ordered in the hospital. Standard admission workflow. It's actually the law in California. Every patient who's admitted in the hospital needs an admissions medication reconciliation as well as a discharge medication reconciliation. So with my transitions of care pharmacy students, we do a lot of those. So this was an admissions medication reconciliation. He had the patient's home medication list in front of him. One of the medication on the list was Lantus. And the way we verify these is either by interviewing the patient or by contacting the pharmacy if we cannot get a hold of the patient or a family member. So this time he was going to call the pharmacy. He picked up the phone, called the outpatient pharmacy to verify the fill for Lantus, and asked when this patient last filled their Lantus. The pharmacy technician told him, "We don't have anything for this patient for Lantus." But he gets Semglee. The student said, "No, no, 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 no. This patient is supposed to be on Lantus. Are you sure you're looking at the right patient?" So I had to step in and tell him Semglee and Lantus are both insulin glargine. It's the same active ingredient, same mechanism of action, just different manufacturers, different brand names. Semglee is a biosimilar. The patient had been filling his insulin glargine this entire time, but the student almost missed it because he didn't realize that insulin glargine and Lantus and Semglee were the same thing. So here's what was going through my mind in that moment. He had been in pharmacy school for 3 years. He knew insulin glargine, the mechanism of action, the indication, how to dose it, how to monitor it, but he had never connected the brand names well enough to recognize that what the pharmacy said and what the home medication list said were pointing at the exact same drug. This is an F1 gap, not a pharmacology gap, not a critical thinking gap, a nomenclature gap. And it showed up within hours of his first encounter with this pharmacy. And I would also like to add that not knowing brand name, generic names, biosimilar names for top 300 drugs like this kind of gives a really bad impression to the preceptor for a pharmacy student beginning their advanced pharmacist practice experiences, APPEs. And this was not a one-time thing. It is a pattern I have seen consistently across 10 years of precepting. Later in that same rotation, the same student was taking a medication history and the patient mentioned they were on Vimpat. He wrote it down, moved on, never connected it to lacosamide, the generic name, which is what the discharge instructions, the insurance billing, and the clinical documentations were going to use. Again, 2 names, 1 drug, and he could only navigate it in one direction. Here's why this matters beyond awkward moments. In pharmacy, the name is the drug. When you miss a brand to generic connection during a medication history, you might document the wrong drug, miss a duplicate therapy, or fail to catch an interaction because you didn't recognize what you were actually looking at. And some of these pairs are not just confusing, they're dangerous. Take hydroxyzine and hydralazine, for example. They're not brand generic names, but students get them confused all the time. Naloxone and naltrexone, same story. Morphine and hydromorphone. These are on every high alert medication list in healthcare because the name confusion is real and the consequences are serious. So preceptor noticed an F1 gap immediately, not because they're waiting to catch you, but because drug name fluency is one of the clearest, fastest signals of whether a student is ready to operate in a clinical space. So here's how to close this gap before it costs you a med rec, a counseling session, or a clinical read you could have caught, or maybe even your preceptor's first impression of you. Start with top 300 drugs, brand to generic, generic to brand, drug class, basic indication. Not just recognize them, own them in both directions. Say the name out loud when you study. Reading silently and speaking out loud are two completely different cognitive tasks. Practice saying the name the way you would say it in a real patient conversation, not the way it looks on the page. Master your high risk pairs before you go into your rotations, like hydroxyzine and hydralazine, naloxone and naltrexone, metoprolol tartrate and metoprolol succinate, tramadol and trazodone. Know them so well that both names sound completely distinct, even under pressure. And practice the three-step connection. Every time you encounter a drug name, connect it to its other name, its class, and its indication. Name, class, indication. That connection should become automatic enough to happen in the background while the actual clinical conversations keep moving forward, right? If you want a head start, I built a top 300 flashcard covering exactly those, the brand name, the generic name, the drug class. And because I built it particularly for the Naplex, there are a lot of other Naplex pearls included. And I'm going to attach the link to the flashcards in the description down below. So that's F1. There are 7 more F categories to go in the foundational knowledge domain alone. Drop a comment, F2 through F8. Which one do you want next? Pathophysiology, drug indications, dosing, pharmacokinetics, infectious disease, monitoring parameters, and then the clinical baseline you should have. The student from the Lantus story, by the end of that rotation, he was the one catching brand name discrepancies on the medication list before I even got to them. I think it happened because he went and actually learned them. Close this gap early. It is one of the fastest wins in this entire series. You're going to listen to this video and think, that's easy. Yes, it's easy, but you'd be surprised how many students face this gap. So close it early, do your top 300 drugs, know the brand name, the generic name, and the indication. If you're not subscribed yet, subscribe now because F2 is coming next. Until next time, rookies.